Hey everyone, so today I wanted to talk a bit about an upcoming feature of 3.15 that I'm pretty excited for, which is loot generation. FPS and on-foot content in general has always seemed a bit lacking in Star Citizen, but this seems like a good step towards making it a more engaging and rewarding experience. Before we start though, if you enjoy this video, please consider liking and or subscribing, or if you really want to help me out, you can become a member with the join button. I really appreciate all you guys' support. Alright, so I want to start out with some context on the current state of on-foot missions. As far as I'm aware, there's only a few main types of them. You've got your box delivery missions, which I'd say barely qualify since most of the mission is generally going to be flying from location to location, especially with some of the new types of these missions like the quantum sensitive delivery, where you can't even quantum travel to your destination. And then I guess you could also throw trading in here as well, but there aren't really missions for that yet besides the one that exists for the Ninetales lockdown, and also there's still a ton of issues with cargo running in general right now. Then you've got the really old investigation missions, which you can tell are old because they only pay you 4,000 credits to spend, I'd say, at least 20 minutes getting lost in a cave. These are okay, but once you've done one, they're all pretty much the same, just with a different layout of cave. Then you've got your combat missions, which for the most part are just going to be you go to some place, whether that be a bunker on Hurston or a security post Korea near Selin, and either go take out one specific target or a certain number of targets. There are a few more unique missions from the various mission givers as well, like the one that you can get from Twitch over in Area 18, but if you break them down, they're pretty much just a combination of some of these previous mission types, like a combat mission where you have to deliver something at the end. But just like those investigation missions, for most of these mission types, once you've tried out one example of a specific type, you're not really going to get all that different of an experience doing it again. So there's a lot of ways that they could improve on this repetitiveness, and a lot of things are coming that'll eventually help, like improved AI performance so that you don't end up with weird situations like this, and just so that the missions are more challenging and engaging in general. If you haven't tried a mission that involves FPS combat, you're probably going to be disappointed by the AI's current performance, but that's not an issue with the actual code that the AI run on, it's just an issue with the amount of server resources. So yeah, just a warning, if you end up on an empty server that's running very smoothly, be prepared for the AI to be much more of a challenge than usual. So we'll eventually get that sort of performance more consistently once they get server meshing in, but another thing that will be coming eventually to help diversify missions are new game systems like Quanta, which will allow them to make much more varied content based around the same sort of template for a mission. But loot generation is a game system that should be coming up pretty soon, and I think it'll also be a big improvement to these missions. First of all, it's going to make it so that you get a slightly different experience each time you take a mission, as long as they do the loot generation right. And inside Star Citizen, they made it sound like they have pretty granular control over what weapons or armor, or whatever they decide to give you will spawn. But if they just decide to spawn in weapons that you can buy at any live fire weapons, I'm going to be a little underwhelmed. Doing just a few FPS missions will get you a massive stockpile of weapons if you take the time to pick them up from the enemies that you down. So just more of the same things but placed in a box at the end of the mission doesn't sound too exciting to me. I know it does take a ton of work to put a new item in the game, even for something as small as a pistol, so I don't think that they should focus on making items specifically for the sake of them being rare loot at the moment, but I think until they have the time to dedicate to doing something like that, they can make these loot piles exciting to players by just making some simple skins for weapons or armor that aren't available for purchase. And I think this should be pretty easy to do if they just change the color of a few of the textures. And it wouldn't be completely unprecedented either. I'll show it off a little bit more in my upcoming Xenothreat video, but for participants of Xenothreat who reach a high enough reputation with the civilian defense force, they'll be getting a new exclusive set of armor. So having items available that aren't quite as special but are still unique for completing missions like this would be pretty cool. What do you guys think they should do though? I do think that stuff for FPS missions like armor, weapons, and ammo should be cheap like they currently are, but that means in order to make something in that category exciting to find, it needs to be exclusive in some other way. So I think having special variants of weapons would be a cool way to do this, but if you guys have good ideas for loot, I'm definitely interested in hearing them. And then that brings me to the other problem with FPS missions that loot generation has the potential to fix, that being the low reward for most of these missions, especially when you consider the time investment that all of these take. Now this has been getting better over the most recent patches, and some of the more recent additions to this category of mission are actually pretty decent in this aspect. So these entrenched bounty missions are still not at the point where they compete in terms of payout with some of the higher level group bounty missions, but I think they pay out a reasonable amount considering that you don't need an expensive combat ship to complete them. All you need is a good set of armor and a rifle, or really just a rifle with how bad the AI perform on the currently overtaxed servers. But yeah, I'd say 25,000 credits with your typical rep-based bonuses on top of that is not that bad, especially if you take the approach of just hitting backspace instead of trying to navigate your way out of the cave, which significantly decreases the time it takes to do these missions. And yeah, with more and more Death of a Spaceman features coming online soon, that eventually won't be an option, but I don't feel too bad doing it now when my ship literally disappears seconds after I exit it at the moment. The mission where you clear out security post Correa also isn't too bad in terms of rewards for your effort, as you don't even have to take the time to fly down to the surface of a planet or moon to do it, and you get 21,000 credits for taking out just 7 NPCs. Now this is a spot that can be used to clear your crime stat, so you might run into some actual players, which may complicate things a bit, but I always try to do this mission when it pops up, and it's a bit of a fun break from doing ECN alerts and group bounties in the Crusader area. For the rest of the on-foot missions though, the payouts are pretty meager. The Hurston bunker missions, I'd say, are actually the hardest of all the ones I've mentioned, since you have to deal with anti-air turrets when you're landing, but despite this, they only pay 14,000 credits. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the highly time-consuming missions where you have to investigate a cave to find a missing person only pay out around 4,000 credits. Now, I do think these payouts are a little bit low, and they should be increased a bit, but I don't think the solution to making these missions feel worthwhile is necessarily just going to be increasing them to the level where they're directly competitive with missions that you do in a ship, like PvE bounty hunting missions. PvE bounty hunting should pay more, I think, just because you're risking both your life and your ship, and losing either of those is going to have even worse consequences as the game gets closer to completion. But if these on-foot missions had reasonable credit rewards along with the chance to find something cool if you were lucky, then that could be a pretty fun experience. Earning credits is great, but min-maxing your earning can get pretty tedious, and it would be nice to have some other goals to work towards in-game, and I think rare items could be one of those. And in addition to rare rewards, if they wanted to go in this direction, which it seems like they do with the whole Quanta system, so this might be something that gets added in a bit later, they might have certain areas have massive stockpiles of weapons, and eventually once you're able to sell things, they could possibly have these missions have massive payouts occasionally if you happen to stumble upon, let's say, a stash of railguns, that if you take the time to load up into your ship, you could sell for thousands of credits maybe. Now again, I think that's going to be much further in the future, but having something like that, I think, could improve the immersion of these missions, because while I don't think it makes sense for the missions themselves to pay out a ton, since a lot of them are just a very simple task that you're completing, having the potential to have those random payouts in the form of different types of cargo or items that you find could be a good way to make these missions more enticing. We already have the new reputation system that's being developed, so having that along with a variety of rare items that you can look around the verse and try to find, you'd have a good amount of options of other stuff to do besides spending all your time trying to earn money. Let me know what you all think though. Are you looking forward to this new system? And if you could choose what gets generated in those loot stashes, what type of stuff would you have it be? Okay, so that's all I have for today, but be sure to check back soon because Xenothreat is back, and I want to take another look at it now that it's actually in the persistent universe. Now I want to thank my channel members, GreatWatch93 and StarJump Starlet. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and if you guys want to help me out, you can do that by hitting the like and subscribe button, or if you really want to help me out, you can become a channel member with the join button. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.